Good evening, and welcome to the Paranormal Lens podcast, presented by Jatnex Paranormal. I'm here, Chad Thomas, your host, with my co-host Jamie Widener. How are you tonight, Jamie?
Chad, I'm wonderful. How are you doing?
I'm doing doing great, except for the little intro being the wrong one. I guess that means you're up with the.
I got to do it again. All right, fine. Cool.
Yep.
I'll do more Stromel all over. That's a cool place. I'm
It
happy to.
it sounds like it. I'm definitely want to get there. So
Well, what you guys don't get to see on the back end with us is that when the stuff starts, there's like a kind of like a startup page, and as it was coming in, the slide popped up for the cover slide popped up, and Chad was, that's the wrong one. And it took all I had not just to bust out laughing while we come in because we're right behind it. So, oh, it happens. Welcome,
yeah,
welcome to live theater, right? Here we are.
exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
So.
Oh well.
Yeah, so, I can still do my topic, though maybe people don't know what it is yet. So, but
It's true.
anyway,
No,
how
it's a
how
mystery.
was how was your week, Jamie?
It's been good. It's been really good. Time has flown by once again, and we're back. So,
Uh-huh.
we had some fun Saturday evening at Booby's Brewery with our public investigation and our Para Unity event.
Uh-huh.
Um, we have a dry trainee in the house, so we got to do some on that some outside drive. Well, I could do indoor driving, but got to get out and do some driving yesterday. My knuckles finally have stopped being white
Oh, that's
from holding on for dear life. But she did good. So
good.
we're gonna get there sooner than later. I'm sure of it. So,
Hmm.
what about you?
I took some time off work from Friday through today, so
Wow,
I wish I could say, I'm rested and relaxed because I'm not, but I've been off work, so it's sort of been nice. So,
that's one less thing.
mhm. But
Nice.
yeah, we were at the brewery the other night, and it was an interesting night. It was a little bit different. We were trying some new things, and it was definitely fun having another group there with us.
Yes,
We had
agreed.
some good interaction. We had some great clients, and made it a lot of fun. So
Absolutely. Yeah,
so yeah,
Gary and Stacy with Land and Legend Paranormal were a blast to have. Thanks for again, thanks guys. We've said this to you so many times that night, but thanks for coming out and jumping in. Both feet, coming off a long day, being at the Paracon down at
Amherst,
Penhurst. Yeah, that just totally escaped me. I want to say Crescent because I know we're going to Crescent, but
right?
they're Paracon. But that energy helped a lot, and some really interesting folks as far as mixed bag of experience. With the individuals who joined us, and we had a full house, packed, sold out event. So
Hmm.
that
And
really brought
everybody showed up.
everybody got there. Uh, Gosh. So, and that's not unusual, of course, because you pay for a ticket, you go, you come, but
Uh-huh.
sometimes we do see some drop offs, I guess, but,
Yep.
and as always, by the end of the night, folks are, waning because, we go into the, after midnight, which some folks never see. And,
Uh-huh.
11:59. So, it's
Yep.
always funny when we start with, how long we're going to be here. You see people's eyes pop.
Yep.
The ones that have a 9 o'clock bedtime.
Yep.
Um, I'm not far from that, but I think we, as far as equipment, we had stuff happening with all of our stuff, which was great. And you and I got to team together with Kirsten, which was really cool because I don't
and
get to investigate with her very often.
and Alex.
Yeah, well, and Alex, right? I didn't finish.
Okay.
The energy that she brings is uniquely different because we're used to each other. We spend a lot of
Right.
time together, and we investigate together a lot. We do this together, So having her spin on things, and then Alex is a wild card. He is a sensitive individual, so he can pick up on things that we don't, and has the youthful energy that
Hmm.
we don't. So,
Yeah.
um, but in the bar area was really interesting, and the dead bell never fails. So we just kept having great activity around that, and
Yep.
the yes no device
Hmm.
was really helpful. That's the first time I've had that work in quite a long time, and it
Hmm.
was just popping the whole time. So outstanding. Good
Yep.
night.
Yep. It was good to work with Kirsten because she will be stepping away for a little bit.
Oh,
So we best of luck to her.
yeah,
And
taking
they're
on the new
doing.
role of mom
Yep.
really soon. So
Exactly. So.
best with everything there. When we're gonna miss you, and we'll see you back soon though.
Hmm. So Jim has a comment here. He said we need to do a behind the paranormal, I think, paranormal lens documentary.
That would be the most. I think paint drying documentaries are more fun than that. Uh, or more interesting either way.
And good evening to Bert. So good to see you. So,
Hey, Bert. Good evening, Jim. Thanks for the comment. We'll have our people look into that.
yep. So, all right. Well, anything else, Jamie, before we
No,
dive into this one?
no, let's do it.
All
Let's get
right.
to what is the. Let's get. I guess I got to start the Morris Jumel. I got to find my material from last time. Hold on a second. Let me go
No,
dig it
no,
out.
no, no. Let me. We're gonna tonight. I'm working on something that has a little bit of a level of controversy. If you remember back to season 2, episode 35, Jamie, you shared paranormal hoaxes, right?
Yes, of course.
So we are doing the sorry, we're throwing the slides up here. We're going to look at the box, which may fall into that category as well. Sorry, I'm trying to get everything set up here. So we're going to look at the origin of the Dybbuk in the Jewish culture, what connection there is between this and the Dybbuk box, and finally the specific case of the Kevin Manis Dybbuk box, and come to a conclusion whether or not it is a paranormal artifact or a modern hoax. So,
Okay.
are you ready, Jamie? What do you think?
I'm gonna have some popcorn for all this. This is thrilling.
I don't know if it's thrilling, but we'll get started anyway. So, to start, we need to look at some Jewish mysticism. Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines the word Dybbuk as a wandering soul believed in Jewish folklore to enter and control a living body until exorcised by a religious rite. The word comes from the Yiddish word Dibbuk, Dybbuk, and before that, the Latin word Dibbuq, also Dybbuk. But the word as we know it first was used in print around 1903. If you look at Jewish folklore, it is believed that the Dybbuk is an evil spirit that enters into a living person and cleaves to its soul. The spirit would cause mental illness, talk through the mouth of the person, and act as a separate personality to the person. When looking at the Talmudic text and studying the Kabbalah, the word Dybbuk and its roots are never used. The attachment of an evil or unclean spirit can be found in these texts, though, and the word cleaved is used quite often. So, taking a step further back, let's look into the Kabbalistic belief of the soul and spirits. While this is a subject is fascinating and we can spend hours on ideas that have been put forth, for this discussion we will narrow it down a bit. Kabbalah believes that the soul goes through transmigration. This is to allow different levels of experience for the soul and to learn on each of these levels. This may include starting out as a rock, becoming a plant, and then an animal, and then next a human. Each of these steps may take several iterations. The goal is to learn with each experience here on earth and eventually to be able to return to the divine spirit. This is how Judaism describes heaven, which is reuniting with the source energy of God. If a spirit has done something in one of these experiences that God cannot forgive without distancing themselves for a period of time, this spirit is considered to be sent to hell. This is typically for a period of time believed to be 1 year. The material I read suggested thinking of it as a parent giving a child a timeout. Once the period is over, you are released with the expectations of doing better. If a sin was committed that God cannot forgive at all, such as mass murder or genocide, then the soul cannot be reunited with God. At this point, the soul is not going to be reincarnated. Instead, it will be sentenced to purgatory, or what is described as wandering the earth as a ghost. There's another way that souls can become wandering spirits. If someone dies before their time, or there are other issues pulling them back to the physical world, the soul can cause ghost or poltergeist activity. This can happen when a trapped soul feels it has something unresolved or something unfinished in this lifetime, holding them in the earthly realm. Other souls have wasted their time on earth, not finishing a lifetime's duty and objective. Soul possession can happen when a lost soul is seeking any means to get a body to house itself in. Especially in the case of premature death, a soul can attach itself to a person, object, animal, or place. These possessions can be harmless or destructive. If it becomes destructive, an exorcism have to be performed. So the Kabbalah believes there are two types of soul attachment. The first one is when spirits can take control of the bodies of an unwilling host. It is based on the Kabbalic concept of Gilgul, or transmigration, found in the Zohar and other such medieval sources. The second one, which I find interesting, is Ibor Nashama, soul impregnation. It is a related concept also found in the Kabbalistic sources. It refers to the penetration of a Kabbalist soul by an additional soul of an ancient sage who aids him in a spiritual quest. Ibor Nashama was valued as a positive, highly prized form of possession. Now, we're not going to be dealing with that tonight at all, but I find that could be really an interesting subject at some point. We're going to look at transmigration today. It is this attachment that involves Dybbuk. An interesting theory that I found was that most attachment happens to females that the Dybbuks had a connection with in their life. And it is believed that most Dybbuks were males. When a Dybbuk attaches itself to a human, an exorcism needs to be performed to release the spirit. This is usually done by a great rabbi who is typically a Kabbalist. This ability to exorcise Dybbuks and to deal with, in general, with possessions was first found among the Kabbalists of Safed, land of Israel, and was disseminated through hagiographical story collections and Kabbalistic texts. The first recorded account of a Safed exorcism was in the Maze book, published in Basel in 1602. There is also a Yiddish manuscript from Prague dating from the first half of the 17th century, giving a brief description of 3 exorcisms performed by Yitzhak Benish in 1647. These historical texts describe many rituals of exorcism, which is a complex process. The process is different from the better-known Catholic exorcism, where a trained exorcist can rely on the miraculous efficacy of the rite itself. Jewish lore requires the practitioner to negotiate with the evil spirit and convince it to depart. Not only do they have to convince the spirit to depart, they need to convince it to leave the body between the big toe and its nail to avoid permanent damage to the possessed person. Then the exorcist must issue a firm warning to the spirit not to enter anyone else. There is no place for the world of the dead in the abode of the living, is the quote that they use. So if a Dybbuk can't enter a living being, then what can it do other than wander? Well, that brings us to the Dybbuk Box itself. The Dybbuk Box in question is believed to be an antique wine box. It first came to light in a 2003 eBay auction listing by Kevin Manis. Kevin was a writer and owned a furniture business in which he restored and sold many types of furniture. The eBay listing, when cut and pasted into a Google Doc, an 11-point type single spacing, is 4 pages long. I'm not going to read it here, but you can do a Google search and find it. In the Skeptoid podcast number 428, Brian Dunning paraphrased the listing well, so I'm going to use that here. He says, and he's talking about Manis here, his story goes, and I want to emphasize that this is all just a story attached to an item listed for sale, is that he bought it at a yard sale a few years previously, and the family told him that grandma had brought it back from Poland while escaping the Holocaust, and that she told them never to open it, but they were quite anxious that he should take it away, and if they were glad to get rid of it. He took it back to his furniture shop where it frightened away an employee. The light bulbs had all shattered, and there was an inexplicable odor of cat urine. Manis offered no explanation of why either he or the employee attributed these events to the presence of the box, but no matter, he opened it and found that it contained the following items. I mean, of course, this box was said never to be opened, and what's he do? He opens it. So it had one 1928 U.S. wheat penny, one 1925 U.S. wheat penny, one small lock of blonde hair bound with string, one small lock of black-brown hair bound with string, one small granite statue engraved and gilded with Hebrew letters. I have been told that the letters spelled out the word shalom, one dried rosebud, one gold wine cup, one very strange black cast iron candlestick holder with octopus legs. He then cleaned it up and gave it to his mother as a gift, and then she immediately suffered a stroke and was able to write him a note saying, "Hate gift." The implication was that his mother attributed the stroke to the gift. So he gave it to his sister, who returned it with a complaint that its doors wouldn't stay shut. He gave it to his brother, who returned it saying it smelled like urine. His girlfriend didn't want it either, so he finally decided to sell it in the shop he'd bought it for. It was found returned a few days later at the door with a note saying, "This has a bad darkness." Manus's tale went on to say he took it home only to have a nightmare about an ugly old hag, and when he told his family about it, his brother, sister, and girlfriend all reported the same dream. His story concluded with the following appeal: "I would destroy this thing in a second, except I really don't have any understanding of what I may or may not be dealing with. I am afraid, and I do mean afraid, that if I destroy the cabinet, what it is, whatever it is that seems to have come with me, the cabinet may just stay here with me. I've been told that there are people who shop on eBay that understand these kinds of things and that specifically look for these kinds of items. If you are one of these people, please, please buy this cabinet and whatever you do with a thing like this, and do whatever you do with a thing like this. Help me." So, like I said, that was paraphrased down. It went into a little more detail. Then there were also like 10 or 15 subnotes saying, you know, I'm not a religious person, and like going through a whole sort of bunch of other stuff. The auction closed in June of 2003, and for $140, Yosef Netsky became the proud owner of the wine cabinet. I want to note at this point the word Dybbuk has not been introduced into the conversation. He eventually relisted the item on eBay 8 months after purchasing it. He said that he blogged about his experience with the box that made him want to get rid of it, but I couldn't find such a blog. In his listing, he mentioned that after acquiring the box, his college roommates had insomnia and illness, but it was likely coincidental. He also mentioned needing car repairs after he had purchased the box, as well as strong odors in his house, a bug infestation, malfunctioning electronic devices, and sort of like large vertical dark blurs in my peripheral vision. It was at this point that the item was listed as a haunted Dybbuk box. He also ended in a similar plea as Manus that said, "Anyhow, for personal reasons, I very strongly do not want this box anymore. I hope there's someone on eBay that will take this thing off my hands. I would just throw it in the woods or something, but I know there has been some interest here in the past." His plea worked, and Nitsky made $280, doubling his investment. The item was purchased by Jason Haxton. Haxton was the director of the Museum of Osteopathic Medicine at A.T. Still University in Missouri. He also collects religious items. Haxton was the professor to one of the roommates that was affected by the box while it was owned by Netsky, and this is how he had originally heard about the box. Haxton claims that on the day after he received the box at his office, he woke up looking like his right eye had been poked. As time went on, he developed other symptoms, including fatigue, a metallic taste in his mouth, and constant nasal congestion and a cough. Around the house, Haxton says he occasionally smelled the signature odors of cat urine and flowers. My San Antonio News quotes Haxton as saying, "The day it arrived, I put my hands on it, and it almost feels like the thing collapsed into a liquid state. I feel like a knife is coming into my gut. I'm paralyzed in pain. When I go to bed, I have terrible dreams of a hag that seems to come with the box." Now, being a researcher, Haxton dug into learning more about the box. Haxton was aided by Rebecca Edery, an Orthodox Jewish bookkeeper who lives in Brooklyn and whose father studied Kabbalah. It was Edery who helped uncover the purpose of the box. The two doors on the outside open up just like a holy closet, or Aron HaKadosh, a receptacle for Torah scrolls, Edery says. This particular size is used when going to comfort the family of the deceased. Edery says she was convinced the box was sacred and had been intentionally stuffed with some sort of spirit. This was done deliberately for a specific purpose. She believes that to put an end to the misfortune, the box needed a formal Jewish burial involving a 10-man minyan or prayer group. If you look at what was found in the box, it definitely has items that would be considered fetishes or keepsakes. Pennies with one's birth year and locks of hair are common traditions for preserving a keepsake of a dead family member. These things would incorporate a memory and possibly a tie to some part of the spirit world. Haxton went on to write a book on the Dybbuk Box. In 2011, he published the book The Dybbuk Box, and in 2012, the film The Possession was released, based on the story of the Dybbuk Box. He also maintained the Dybbuk Box website for many years, though it is no longer online. I tried to search for it and it's not there. One source states that eventually he sought religious and paranormal help to have the entity sealed in the box, at which point he buried it. He kept the location hidden for years until he could figure out the truth or find the right person to help it out. Or maybe he was just waiting for the right offer to come in. Apparently, he donated the box to Zach Baggins in 2016. During his 4-hour live Halloween special in 2018, Zach planned on opening the box live on television. Ultimately, he didn't end up opening it on the show. He said that his production began to fall apart as the scheduled time arrived. On April 7th, 2020, Zach and his team started recording an episode about the Dybbuk Box as he planned on opening it. You have to remember, we're now in lockdown time frame.
Yep.
Once they took the glass lid off the Dybbuk Box, the team started feeling anxious and ill. They ended up leaving it that way overnight. With security cameras running, they left for the night. That night, Baggins claims to have had 2 nightmares, one involving his pet and the other one involving getting sick with COVID. The cameras camera focused on the box activated at 4:53 a.m. The footage captured according to Baggins shows a mist escaping out of the box. In looking at the footage myself, I'm not convinced that it was a mist. It sort of looks to me like some sort of light crossing the screen. Baggins says that in a single frame, he sees eyes that resemble a 19th century illustration of a demon. On April 8th, he opened the box. As he opened it, he said he felt as though something exited the box and went into the museum. They used several devices and got 2 words. The first was Kevin. They think going back to the original owner. And the second was evil. They then caught a sound on a parabolic microphone that they claimed was a child's voice. To me, it sounded like a cat meowing. The team did measure a change in temperature as the box was opened, rising from 86 degrees to 91 degrees. That's a fairly big jump for just opening this box. Using an SLS camera, they recorded an abnormality that supposedly exited the box. Of course, they all felt sick as they walked it through the museum. Aaron passed out and had a disembodied voice threatening him. Typical Ghost Adventures fashion, they then started yelling and losing control. I don't think that there was much more in this episode that was worth watching, so that's where I stopped. And everything I've read says they didn't find anything else after that. Now, we need to keep in mind that this was in the middle of the COVID pandemic, so somebody passing out could have been a lot of different things. So who knows? The box is still on display at Baggins Museum. So typically, this is where we might say, Jamie, do you think it is haunted or not? But this story has a footnote. In 2021, Kevin Manis admitted to writer Charles Moss the box was of his own creation. Manis said, I am a creative writer. The Dybbuk Box is a story that I created. And the Dybbuk Box story has done exactly what I intended it to do when I posted it 20 years ago. When asked what his intention was, he said, it was to become an interactive horror story in real time. He said that he bought the cabinet at a yard sale, he carved the back, created the stones, and added the tokens to the box, and then fabricated the story for his eBay post. When one researcher reached out to 2 of Kevin's friends, Kurt Morris and Matthew Shaggy Christensen, who worked with Manis at a bar called Club Underground in Beaverton, Oregon at the time, they said, the hair in the Dybbuk Box? That was my hair, Christensen confesses. Kevin is one of the most brilliant people that I've ever met, Morse tells me over the phone. Specific box was Kevin at a low point needing some money, and in his brilliant mind came up with an incredible story that he knew would sell, and it became the phenomenon that it is now. Now, one interesting point here is Kevin didn't really make much off of this, the story of this. If you want to, if we believe everything so far, he basically made $140, and that's where his profit ended. Now, Kevin says it wasn't the money that made him do it, but relationship problems with a girlfriend and a host of other bad luck events. He says he channeled all of that negative energy into his tall tale. At the time I created the Dybbuk box, it was during Yom Kippur and the Day of Atonement. I created the box while praying and asking for forgiveness for all of the sins that I had committed that I knew about, and perhaps even more important, the sins I hadn't committed that I didn't know about, says Manus. Now, apparently, not everything was totally made up. He did give the box to his mother on Halloween, and she did have a stroke. Manus claims that he did tell Yosef Netsky the story was a fabrication, but that he never told Haxton. Some believe that the two of them may have worked together to further the story, but both adamantly deny collusion. In fact, Haxton still believes that there is truth in the story. His theory is that the powers of the box are real, and that maybe Manus created himself using Kabbalah. The story keeps growing. The term Dybbuk Box didn't even exist before Manus came up with it, as he embellished his story over the years. Kenny Biddle investigated the box and found the exact same box for sale. He also found this Facebook post from Manus dated October 24th, 2015. So this is before some of these other things have come about. I am the original creator of the story of the Dybbuk Box, which appeared as one of my eBay posts back in 2003. The idea that the Dybbuk boxes have some kind of history prior to my story, and the idea that a Dybbuk box could contain anything other than a Dybbuk, along with any deviation to the type of its contents I created to be inside the Dybbuk box, is laughable at best. How about this? If you or anyone else can find any reference to a Dybbuk box anywhere in history prior to my eBay post, I'll pay you $100,000 and tattoo your name on my forehead. So another thing that I found interesting is that Yosef Netsky has never been found for an interview. Is this another part of the fabrication? One thing that we do know is that Manus created something that went from a story to folklore to big business. You can buy haunted Dybbuk boxes online, find tons of YouTube videos of people opening them. If you want to take a road trip to Las Vegas, spend $54, you can see the original Dybbuk box at the Haunted Museum. So that's where what I've got. Here are some sources for my research: thehauntedmuseum.com, inverse.com/input, neonreviewjournal.com, Los Angeles Times, A Jinx in a Box by Leslie Gorstein, July 25th, 2004, San Antonio News, Story of Haunted Boxes Isn't Just a Tale Dreamed Up in Hollywood by Jessica Belasco, September 21st, 2012, JewishVirtualLibrary.org, Medium.com, The Kabbalistic Afterlife by Sherry Larch. So, Jamie, what do you think?
Wow. It starts out sounding so possible. And then, like anything else, when people get time to think and talk, they tell you everything, like that's
Mm-hmm.
so, you kind of have to believe perhaps that the truth really is that it's a yard sale find and, a great story. Um, I took some notes here as we went, so I have a couple of things I would like to talk through.
Sure.
Um, I find it interesting, and we came across this, and I forget where in the past, but the 1 year of possession was the assumption, for the Dybbuk to take over someone,
Okay.
should it come into your body, and I think that's really like why 1 year, like
Right.
because it signed a lease, you know. What's the deal? Like, is that a contract that has to get out?
Well, the 1 year that I was referring to is the time that God needed to be separated from that wasn't a Dybbuk. That was
Oh, oh, I
if you were going
misunderstood.
to hell. Yeah, but yes, I have heard that before as well.
I've heard that 1 year window of in other areas as well, and it's like, back in the olden days, we'll call it that, a year was a very long time, you know.
Hmm.
Um, so, and it still is. I mean, it's 365 days, no matter what year,
Right,
where you are in time. It's the same, it didn't change. But it just seems like it was a different thing where a year was like this big window of time
right.
where,
It's
now we think
and
differently.
right,
Maybe, well, life expectancies were shorter, so maybe years were counted differently that way.
right.
Maybe.
And the other thing is, as our friends, uh, Tony Rathman and those guys,
Mhm.
time is a human construct.
Yes.
So why would a spiritual thing be tied to a human construct? That's all a whole another rabbit hole to go down. But anyway,
Right.
so
Very, very fair. And interesting that there were the female attachments by male spirits. So, it's
mhm.
just, to me, it was just another way of men controlling women.
Well,
you know,
I
like, it weren't,
yeah,
there weren't women controlling men, because that would never happen, right? Like a, so
but there
alternative.
was more. There was more that expanded there about how that would cause confusion, like internal confusion between a male spirit and a female body. And then in that also they talked about how possession and the Salem witch trials and other witch trials throughout history pointed to a mental illness.
Right.
So, but yes, I found that interesting as well. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And, with the spirit exiting the body, between the on the big toe, between the toe and the nail, aren't there better ways to go out than there? I mean, that, yeah,
apparently that was the safest place for it to.
we
How
have
did?
actual ways of releasing things physically than that. So, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Uh, Very strange. Very, very strange. I learned something from Kevin Manis, though.
okay.
I did. And that's when grandma tells you not to open something, you don't freaking open it,
Exactly.
you know?
Hmm.
Um, and, absolutely, the curiosity that I think anybody would have when someone tells you not to do something,
Uh-huh.
what's the first thing you want to do?
You want to
Exactly
do
that.
so. Now there is some expansion of the story saying that there are 10 Dybbuk boxes out there, and that
Okay.
this is one of 10, and apparently the second one now is at the haunted museum as well. It's just more mo jumbo there, Jamie. I think.
Oh, Zach Baggins.
Yeah.
All right, sure, sure. One thing I did find interesting, though, in things that were inside, the wheat pennies.
Hmm.
For even if we were going to go back like 20 years, into the early 2000s, wheat pennies were valuable. We knew that.
Right.
So why put them in there and not have them as savings? Like, to spend them. Why select wheat pennies versus a common copper penny of any kind of that same year?
Right.
Um, that's just you. That's rather unique of a choice, and to have them.
Well, I
Um,
think I think in the years that they were, if they were tied to somebody's birth year,
mhm.
those were the only pennies they were. Like they wouldn't have had a regular penny of a 1921 or 1925.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I was thinking they were special edition ones, but you're right. Back then they were not. Okay, it's just odd that they were wheat pennies. Like, why not just pick a penny
Well,
from like the
well,
40s or 30s
well
or the
but
10?
it was weird that they were called out as wheat pennies too.
Yeah,
It
like
was just
specifically.
yeah. So
Like,
I,
it sounded, it was an odd call to make. And again, if it's a hoax, that's intentional.
right.
So he really put some thought to that, to use those. Maybe it's because, well, like, for the story, it got my attention. So maybe that's the case.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I- all of this, though, all of this brought to mind the the treasures that you can find at antique stores and flea markets and thrift shops, and
Hmm.
all kinds of places where people don't know what they have, and they've done whatever they want to do to either donate it to, say, the thrift stores and such, or obviously sell it or consign it, whatever it may
Mhm.
be, at the other shops or flea markets or whatnot. Um, I don't remember who has this, but I know someone in our team at one point, whether it's someone still with our team or not, found at the Burning Bridge Antique Store in Columbia, PA, a very small violin case, a miniature case, that when open had basically a vampire prevention kit inside, some
Oh, I remember
stakes and a
that, yeah.
hammer and a vial of, what would be holy water across. Um, Not what you'd expect. Like, you expect to open up and find it a musical instrument.
Right.
But everything had little pockets, and it was a felt or velvet. Either I forget which one interior.
Mhm.
So it was meant to be, pretty. Um, but like that's one of you never know,
Right.
and that's why you open everything too, I guess. But
Mhm.
um, you know, and there was a store in New Holland. I think it's now closed, or at least temporarily, where they had all kinds of interesting troves of things. So. Um, it's you just got to get out there and look around for some stuff, and you will find some cool things. Now, this box, regardless of what it might be on the paranormal side, is still a pretty cool thing. When it
Mhm.
was opened in one of the original slides, it's got the glassware, it's got the bottles inside of it. It's just like a mini liquor cabinet. I'm like, who doesn't want that?
Right.
Um, you can hide your stuff away. Um, but whatever it may be, get out there and shop and look at these places and see what
Mhm.
kind of magic you can find. It's pretty cool.
Yep.
And I'll say one more thing that I've always been a fan of these places. So I grew up, in Columbia, so we have a ton of antique stores. That is like the niche here. So just wandering through the stores, you always see these really cool things. And being a kid here, I never had any money, don't have
Yep.
money. But now as I'm an adult, I'm like, how much for this?
Mhm.
And then the next question is, do I really need it? And that's where the no comes in, of course.
Right.
But
Yep.
um, I can't say I've never picked up some stuff just because I thought it was cool.
Mhm.
This box fits that.
Yeah.
So with the last part of it, um, the belief or the premise that there may be 10 total boxes
Mhm.
out there somewhere. Where does this come from? The 10. Like what makes that number?
I think that is what Manus kept adding to his story over the years. Like he kept
Okay.
embellishing the story, and I don't know if he created more then, which is where the one sorry, I'm horrible horrible at remembering names. The professor
Okay.
is wondering if he actually did create this and put it in, using like curse the boxes themselves.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, and that that it goes back to that theory: can we create paranormal by putting energy and thought into something?
Well, that's actually Bert's comment here. I love antique stores, but be careful what you bring home.
Right.
You know, hmm. I think there is something in that. I do. And you know, with respects to that too, the energy of someone who owned it and really cherished something and loved it, as their most some things are their most prized possession. We just don't know, because we're
Right.
obviously they're not there. But if someone else had done the same, I can believe that their energy would have stayed with it. And that we see this with stuff. We see attachments all the
Hmm.
time. Like that term comes up commonly, and that's usually a concern for us at a paranormal event. And leaving, so you don't want to take anything home with you,
Right.
right? But what if that thing, that physical thing? I mean, I think John Zaffis has made a career here, in his paranormal museum as well, in his collections.
Right.
He keeps these things and takes them from people. We found the monkey that David now has at his office. David
Mhm.
Armini, our teammate, came from a resident in the local area who really was having issues with it, and asked us if we could take it for him. So I certainly believe, I definitely believe that things can become, can absorb the energy of someone,
Hmm.
if it's that strong for them.
Right.
Absolutely,
Right. Or Bert's comment here: if residual can be left in a building, why not an object?
absolutely,
So,
I totally agree.
well, and the other part of this is, Transmigration, the Jewish thought of transmigration believes that everything has a spirit. Like,
Okay.
so even an inanimate object can have a spirit of some sort. A rock, a tree. I mean,
Mhm.
I guess trees not technically inanimate, but um,
Right.
rocks and water, like it all has spirits, and that's sort of going back to a Native American belief
Mhm.
too.
Right.
Um, uh, you know, why, that box is made of trees, so it all ties together,
Sure.
doesn't it?
Sure.
You know,
Well, it does. And, there's if we go back to the superstition episode way back, the reason we knock on wood is that we are trying to get a blessing from the spirit of the trees,
right?
to help us get past something, that we're afraid of.
Hmm.
So, or don't want something negative to happen to us, so we knock on wood.
Right.
There wasn't, there were more trees than there were furniture back then. So we go outside and knock on the maple tree. So yeah, I totally understand that. It makes sense.
Yeah. So,
I've asked a lot of questions, but where are you here then? What do you think?
I'm very skeptical on this one. Um, do I think it's a possibility? But I'm pretty skeptical. So,
Well, I think that's us in general, right? Like we are
right.
skeptical, and not everything is paranormal. First
Right.
of all, and we want to find normal things first that it could be, and then take those away, and then what's left would be the paranormal.
Hmm.
Um, so I think there's further investigation or further study. Being in the possession of Zach Baggins, I'm sure it's in good hands, and we know where it is. So road trip to Vegas, right? Um,
Yeah.
I was
Exactly.
out there for work a little while back, and a little over a year ago, and I had some free time, but I chose not to go only because I don't have an issue with Zach Baggins. I want to be clear on this. I don't at all. I mean, I make fun and I carry on. I think everybody does to some degree because of the bombastic nature that he um, works with. His
Right.
persona. But I don't have a problem supporting his business and things like that. I just there were so many other things to do in Vegas, and
Right.
especially I was at the bottom of the strip, it's at the top of the strip, etc. So I just never made it up there. And it was so when the F1 was there, which totally disrupted everything, like
I'm
traffic,
sure. Yeah.
the whole 9 yards of that. Like the strip was closed literally. I could have found my way if I wanted to, kind of like really wanted to. But it does. My thought was next time I'm back, and I'm sure I'll get back eventually. I will definitely want to check this out. Knowing that the box is there gives me a greater reason to do so.
Mhm. Yeah.
But it's interesting, like to have these all this physical stuff in a space. I mean, you have to think something's going on, and the note of opening the box and having um, activity happening around the museum shortly after or therefore of it.
Right.
How do you know it's not something else that's there too, like an interaction thing?
Right.
Um, and it's mad thing to think it's just not mad. I guess that's the wrong word. It's kind
Right.
of wonky, like
Right.
how can you separate it from this
Right.
one thing versus all this other stuff that's there?
Right. Another anecdote with that in Zach and actually Post Malone. I guess Post Malone visited shortly after it was opened or whatever,
Okay.
and Zach was touching the box and Post Malone was touching Zach. So he wasn't touching the box directly, but he then had several months of bad luck after that. And, so he attributes it to the Dybbuk box. So,
Well, you
yeah.
know, let's. As I keep calling back old episodes, the episode on Robert the Doll.
Mhm.
A believed to be possessed child's doll. If you disrespect him at the museum or the West Mateo Museum and down in Key West, if you go in there and you just be disrespectful for him, you don't ask for permission to take his picture,
Mhm.
all of these things. And I read those stories in the episode of people who wrote letters back saying, "I'm sorry," and trying to apologize and get forgiveness from him because bad things happened to them
Mhm.
shortly after leaving. And one woman had an issue as soon as she stepped past the threshold of the museum to leave.
Right.
She started having health issues. So I mean, it's possible. It really is.
Do you know how
I
many?
can't believe this.
Right. That episode is one that I had done a TikTok preview for.
Yes. Yes.
Do you know how many comments we got
I do. I remember.
apologizing for looking into his eyes?
Yep.
So yeah, there was quite a few.
I recall. Well, I'm not surprised because again, it's a superstition thing, right?
Hmm.
Even
Rather be
if
safe than
they're
sorry.
right, exactly, and therefore you do what you do you request forgiveness, and
Hmm.
it certainly doesn't hurt.
Yeah. So
Oh, Robert. Oh
yeah.
boy.
So
It's
so
another
yeah, I'm definitely on the skeptical on this. So it's a cute story. I mean, the guy admitted he created it.
right. That's the catch to me. Like,
Yeah.
you know, eh, he doesn't have a need to tell us that. In the story, and like because that's in the crafting, the craftiness of a good story is the fact that it could be possible, and that tells you that you've done it well. And
Hmm.
we're here all these years later discussing this, like it could still be possible,
Right.
but then why take the magic out of it and the
Right.
mystic out of it by just you know
Yeah.
kind
I
of
mean, it's
coming up
22
on it.
years later. Yeah.
Yeah, here we are. So I'd like to believe it. I think it's fascinating,
Hmm.
but in the same sense, once that's done, you can't unhear it. You can't unsee it, whatever it
Right.
is, the evidence to prove against it. So it's tough.
Yeah.
Unless, unless a Dybbuk came to him and told him he had to say that.
Mm, see, now you're putting a whole new spin on it, Jamie.
Bam. There you go.
Now I'm completely lost. Uh,
Maybe.
so anyway, but I actually found some of the Kabbalistic beliefs really interesting.
Sure.
Definitely would like to research that more. Not that I'd turn it into an episode, but just sort of how some of it matches some of my personal beliefs
Sure.
of life and death and the spirit world. So
Oh my gosh, how many times we've come across topics here that have led to further investigation of on our own time, like
mhm.
further reading. Um, there's always more material out there, and more material, more evidence, whichever it is, keeps coming forward. So you're never really done with a
Right.
topic.
Yep.
I think that's really cool. That's the field.
Yeah.
We keep trying to learn more and experience more and report back more, so
Hmm.
that others can understand and grow with it as well. So I
Yep.
mean, that's the beauty of the paranormal. I
Yep.
think that's the beauty of anything.
Yep.
Really. Um,
Another example of that is one that you're actually going to be investigating soon, Wilson Castle.
yeah,
A,
physically. Yeah,
a lot of new information has been discovered since we did our episode on that a while ago. Um, so maybe it's time to do a refresher on that one, huh, Jamie?
maybe. Well, we're certainly going to talk about it. I can't argue that.
So
All right, here's a lengthy post from Heather. And let's see if we can get all this. I guess it all shows up there. She says, my father recently passed away. As a child, my first memory of him was sitting at a desk tying flies for fly fishing. I was visiting my stepmom today, and she gave me a very old small box that had tiny hand tied flies that my dad did. I could tell it was from when I was little. I could feel him so strongly that when I was holding it, that in my hand started shaking. My hand started shaking. Sorry. Definitely, residual energy can be in objects. He put a lot of time and energy into them, and I completely understand that.
hmm
Very well said, Heather.
yeah, thanks for sharing that, Heather.
That's really cool. Okay.
It's
Well,
it's funny how timing too. Like,
yeah. Well, exactly, and that's how it always works.
mhm,
I think back to being a kid and with my grandparents. The things that my grandfather, he was a carpenter, and things he made. And I know we have things here, um, from other grandparents, Steph's grandparents.
mhm,
Also a carpenter, craftsman. There are some fantastic things here. So like those, and if nothing else, they have the sentimental value that they were made by a loved one.
right.
And that energy is maybe that's a projected energy of you, us, whoever we are, for that thing, than it is energy coming from it. But we again, it goes back to the point you made. A well-made point earlier is like, could it be that we're creating these things too? So
Possibly. Hmm.
amazing. It's a really good subject, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. And this is one that I'm like, oh, I'm not going to get an hour out of this, and here we are.
Well, we're getting there, right?
Yeah. So
All right. Well, you ready to move on?
sure. Yep.
Okay.
Let's jump to what's coming up.
Sure thing. So, upcoming episodes next week. Next week. Oh my gosh, put S's at the end of everything. I'm going to tackle Men in Black, and the week after on June 3rd.
Jamie, I would not recommend tackling the Men in Black. Not a good idea.
I want to tell you something. Yeah, this has been on the books for us for a while. It's only been on the screen for the last week or two. But every time I start looking at this, I cannot get the hook of the song "Men in Black" out of my head, and I'm waiting for next week to be over so I can finally release it.
Uh-huh.
Like so not that I don't like it, but it's like
Oh, I get it. Yep.
it's just heavy. June 3rd, Jed's going to tackle Menahune. I'm saying tackle again, like you're going to tackle Menahune. I don't think you're going to. We're going to explore Menahune. The week after, I'm going to explore the Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary. And in a very cool episode that I'm looking forward to, Jed's going to talk about the hauntings of his childhood home. And then as we are getting ever closer to July 4th, we're going to tackle Gettysburg. I'm going to take on Gettysburg, PA, and a lot of the stuff that's gone on there over all these years since the Civil War. So, and then we're going to wrap up season 1, believe it or not, on July 1st. So, holy cow. Season 2,
Yeah.
July 1st. So, things coming up in the next couple weeks.
Yeah. Have you started thinking about what your favorite episodes are, Jamie?
They're all my favorites. Sorry, you can't. It's like kids, you can't pick one.
You gotta narrow it down. We can't talk about all 40 some of them, almost 50 of them in one night.
Fine. All right, I'll get you a list.
You have time to think about it.
I do. You know what I'm going to do? Like 10 minutes before we come on, I'll be looking at the set list. No, I'm kidding.
Well, we have a couple more to go, so that
I know, right? I can't pick one yet. I got to wait.
So,
and every week, I have a favorite. Because this is so much fun to do,
mm-hmm.
and I learned something in the stuff that I do, the search and sort and so forth, and I learned something from you when you present as well. It's and if we weren't having fun doing this, we wouldn't still be doing it. I know that.
Right.
But and again, there's so much stuff to learn and so many perspectives of it that are out there in the world. So it's really cool.
Yeah, definitely. So,
all right. So investigations. So not an investigation in June for us at the brewery, but we are going to head out on June 28th to the Haunted Crescent Sanatorium and Prison. Their Paracon. It's a Paracon in horror. So it's going to be a little bit interesting. So come out to see us at that day at Crescent Sanatorium out in Mid-State. I believe it is 11 to 5, if I'm not mistaken. A ticketed event, if I'm not mistaken, there as well.
I think that'll be on the next screen. So
okay, well, good. Okay, good.
I think maybe.
And then I believe there is also a way to get a ticket for the nighttime investigation after the Paracon, which should be very, very interesting. Such a cool place, as and all of the folks who will be there that day. If everyone sticks around, that will be a lot of fun. Plus the guests, so super cool. I have lost my mouse, so hold on one second. But July 26th, we'll be back at Booby's Brewery in Mount Joy, PA, along with August 16th, and I think the July 26th episode investigation is a Para-Unity event, if I'm not mistaken. Again, it maybe.
We don't have. I haven't heard any as who's coming yet, but
okay, we have time. We have plenty of time to figure that one out. Yep. There's the mouse. All right. So again, August 16th, September 27th, spooky season is officially underway then. And then October 11th and 18th, the double dip on that month, right before Halloween. So,
yep.
And some tickets, these events are actually starting to sell a while too. So, plenty of time to get tickets, but don't wait. If you want to make it to these events, just to be safe, that way you're covered.
Yeah. I don't know if you noticed, but Bird said, and we enjoy watching and participating.
Oh, thanks, Bird. I like having you here too. So, shucks. Oh. All right. And I double clicked. Dang it. And Here's the slide for the horror and Paracon out at Crescent, the Haunted Crescent Sanatorium. Again, that is coming up on June 26th. Oh, it's 12 to 6, my mistake. So I was thinking 11 to 5. I guess I wanted to get there sooner and get done sooner. I don't know. But there'll be a lot of vendors there, us included, of course. A lot of cool things to see. I'm not sure about personalities, if any, but probably. We're all personalities, right?
I was gonna say
We
we're
all
there
have
too.
personality. Not that I'm a personality, or either of us, but we're just us. But we all have personalities. Some of us have multiples.
This is true.
All right. So get your tickets now and come out and hang out with us. That'll be a lot of fun that day. We'll have stickers.
We
So
will.
if nothing else,
If nothing else, you have Jot Nick's paranormal stickers and paranormal Lens stickers. So
absolutely. I finally got my Jotnik sticker this weekend. I was so excited. It's on my bag now.
yep, I saw it.
Yep. Looks good. All right. And then how to find us. We're here every Tuesday night at 9 on Facebook and YouTube. So, feel free to jump in anytime. But, if you're not catching us here, we're out there in the world on all of the streaming services the next day on Wednesday, sometime in the early afternoon, I'm sure. It seems to be between noon and 1. But Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, a few others. We're on TikTok, Instagram as well. And then there's a new thing in there somewhere. Where
It's
did it
very
go?
very top.
At the very top, we have our website up. It's not completely complete, but it's up and it's usable. So www, because I'm old, I always say that first. But jot-nix paranormal.com, JOTT-NYXPARA, spell paranormal any way you want to find it. And then that's it. So lots of stuff, lots of ways to connect. Feel free to leave us comments, especially on how much I bumble and mumble through all of the stuff I should know very well by now. But any episode comments or any thoughts to an episode you'd like us to do or see something from us, we're always open to suggestion. We self-produce, so we can move that schedule you saw around at the beginning any way we want to.
Yep.
Just need a little time to investigate it and research a little bit. And just make sure we do it justice. But we're always happy to tackle and do some listener submission work. So,
Yeah.
uh,
And
pleasure.
let us know what your favorite episodes from the past season have been.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Or the past 2 seasons, for that matter.
well, yeah.
There's 104 episodes back there somewhere behind us. So, there's lots of choices.
Mm-hmm. So
All right, sir. I think we covered this. Thank you so much for this topic. Again, it brought a lot of thought, and um, I know I guess it's probably a settled thing based on the information provided by Kevin
Manis.
Ennis. I guess that means it's settled, but is it really?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like you said, the Dybbuk made me do it. I mean, when he was praying, so it could very well have been a spiritual,
moment. He had a moment, right?
So, all right. Well, on that note, I want to say thank you to everybody for sticking with us for another hour. Every time you come out and join us, we appreciate it. Whether you're listening to us live or whether you're coming and catching the restream the next day, we really appreciate it. So,
absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And we will see you next week. Same place, same time. Watch out for Jamie tackling Men in Black.
See you then.
All right. Good night. If I was ready to go, we'd be ready to go.